Hey folks, for nearly 2 decades, people from India and China have been experiencing ever expanding visa backlogs in the employment-based category. And this has also entered a level where the EB1 category, that is a category that's reserved for the most talented individuals of extraordinary ability who have sustained national or international acclaim, professors or outstanding researchers, and multinational executives and managers. These three areas within the EB1 category have also become backlog in some of the green card categories. So the United States State Department had issued a memorandum just a few days back in August of 2024 stating that they have reached the annual limit within the EB1 category. Therefore, within even the EB1 category, all available visas within EB1 have been used. Therefore, embassies, consulates, and we'll see how it I'll explain what's going on with adjustment of status, but embassies and consulates may not issue any more visas in the EB1 category for the remainder of the fiscal year. Now, the good news is the fiscal year ends in September 30th. So October 1st is the first date of fiscal year 2025. Therefore, the impact of this will not be so hard felt in addition to the already existing backlogs and such. So we are seeing a situation where, and I think we have to dig a little bit deeper here, because the real story is that the current administration is utilizing all of the available visas within the present fiscal year. So it is actually a good development in a way that all of the visas within the EB1 category have been utilized, such that we have seen, for example, many hundreds of EB1 cases who have successfully adjusted status within our own firm. Therefore, we're going to probably continue to see that into the fiscal year 2025, which begins in October. So those of you who are thinking about applying for EB1, it is still an opportune time to do so, with the understanding that every year moving forward, there's gonna come a point within the year where the availability of EB1 visas for adjustment of status or for consulates abroad will run out. Now, having run out here in August 27th, meaning 33 days or so prior to the end of the fiscal year, is not so bad. I mean, that means that they pretty much executed and planned the utilization of visas throughout the year pretty well. But we do see the level of demand that does exist within the EB1 category. And to be clear, this demand is not only for EB1A, that is for self-petition individuals of extraordinary ability. How those with outstanding researchers or tenure track professors, as well as multinational executives and managers, all fit within the same chunk of availability of visas, which stands at 28.6% of all available employment-based visas. It's maxed out. So just so you guys understand, all of the visas have been used for fiscal year 2024. There will be no more issuance of visas based upon EB1 approval for the present fiscal year. However, they are continuing to accept adjustment of status applications. You don't have to worry about that. And the issuance of the green card would then take place after October 1st. So if, for example, one had already an adjustment of status case pending with USCIS, and they're in the EB1 category, if they would otherwise have issued a green card this month or upcoming month, which is September of 2024, more likely you're going to see that in October of 2024, because that's the beginning of the fiscal year, unless it has already been counted against the fiscal year 2024 visa. So therefore, you should be fine. Now, understanding the kind of macro issue here at play, which is the green card backlogs and delays stem from a limitation of country availability visas. So each country has a certain quota that they are given. Actually, all countries are given the same quota. And this particularly impacts those from India, China, Mexico, Philippines. Therefore, you find that the eligibility of individuals from, when we're talking about EB1 category, mainly India and China, you're going to see that there's a higher demand than there is availability. So that's what causes the backlog. Presently, within the current time period, and we're talking September 2024, the EB1 category for India is around 2022. So it is February 2022. This means if your EB1A application was approved prior to February of 2022, you would be able to adjust status or file adjustment of status now, or apply for a visa abroad now. Due to the utilization of all the available visas, it wouldn't be issued until October. However, that is not a huge difference of only a month or so. Now, when it comes to all other countries, you are current, so you don't have to worry about it. Besides India and China, EB1 is going to be current for all countries. Now, one thing to take note of, and I think this is really applies to many people out there. If you have a prior approved I-140, an I-140 in the EB2 or EB3 category, and we now submit your EB1 case, that priority date from EB2 or EB3 can be ported into the EB1 category such that you can file adjustment of status based on your previous priority date. That's why it's always a good idea. And there are people who maybe have only been in the US for a very, recent time period, or maybe they just finished their studies or such. You might not be ready for, particularly if you're from India or China, you might not be ready for an EB1A case or any category of EB1. However, you might qualify for an EB2 national interest waiver. So if your employer is not willing to file your EB2 perm, or you just don't want to wait for it, what you could do, and this is a strategy to avoid that huge backlog, is file for an EB2 national interest waiver so that you can set your priority date. And once you have locked in your priority date, then in the future, maybe a couple years down the line, if your date is then current and you apply for EB1, you can take the priority date from your EB2 national interest waiver and port it into the EB1. Therefore, you'd have ability to, acquire that green card instead of, being on a very long EB2 backlog. The other thing that you can do, if you are married, if you're from India or China and you're born in India or China and you're married to an individual, even if they're an Indian or Chinese national, but they're born in another country. For example, maybe they're born in the Gulf, Emirates or somewhere. So if they're born in another country, Canada, for example, then you can do what's called interfiling. Not interfiling, but cross chargeability, and use their country quota allocation for your adjustment of status. So cross chargeability allows you to then submit your case. I mentioned interfiling. Interfiling relates to a situation where you have already submitted your adjustment of status case. However, the date after submitting your adjustment of status case backlogged. And this happens quite often, particularly for people from India. So your date became current in an EB2 scenario, and you file your adjustment of status. Later on, that date retrogresses. So you have a pending adjustment of status. You probably have an EAD, but the retrogression has taken place. Therefore, there's no more work being done to advance your green card. Then what you could do is, if you file in another category like EB1, you can do an interfiling of your adjustment of status case so that you don't have to refile a brand new adjustment of status. You can use the same adjustment of status, but interfile the newly approved I-140 with the existing adjustment of status that you've already submitted, such that your case would then be processed. So those of you who are in a situation where you're in a backlog, understand that this backlog stems from a higher demand and from countries such as India and China, where you have a very advanced, sophisticated, professional class of individuals who have come into the US, often, very educated, very successful. They're applying in these very limited high categories. There's more applications than there is availability of applications. So what's happening is they are essentially running out of visa availability before the end of the fiscal year. So that's really what's taking place. And then we create backlogs based on those demands. The biggest backlog, of course, being EB2 and EB3 India, where folks are, essentially not seeing any light at the end of the tunnel. You can use an EB1 application, port your previous I-140, EB2, EB3 priority date into EB1, and then file for your adjustment of status and receive a green card using that previous priority date. So these are the strategies that are going to allow you to really succeed in terms of your overall situation. So stay proactive. Consider all of the above options for your adjustment of status. That could be things like filing an EB2 NIW early on in your career and thinking down the road 4 or 5 years ahead. When you do file for your EB1, you'd already have a priority date. I see so many people, for example, they come into the United States, for example, in 2013, 2014, they complete a master's degree. It might be their second master's degree. And then they do an OPT for 2-3 years. And then they go on an H-1B. And then till this date, they do not have a priority date. That is a big problem, because if they were able to secure a priority date back in 2015, today they would be able to file for an EB1 adjustment of status immediately and, go on with their life. Instead, even if they go through the very difficult process of achieving success in an EB1A category, they're still sitting on that approval, waiting for the dates to become current, when they could have very easily filed for a national interest waiver in the past, had a current date, and, found themselves in a green card situation. Therefore, anybody who is, for example, completing a master's degree, particularly one that's in a STEM area, you must consider filing for an EB2 national interest waiver to secure the priority date for yourself. And also, this allows you to continuously renew your H-1B until your date becomes current, or until we, essentially upgrade you from an EB2 to an EB1 scenario. I hope this advice helps you in your pursuit of a green card. Please reach out, silmilaw.com, and we can answer more of your particular and specific questions.